Hello and welcome to Too Many Movies, the podcast where we discuss DVDs, Blu-rays, and even the occasional VHS tape. I'm your host, Hal, and with me here today, Romi. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Romi. I've known in the Shape Circle as Fragglevision Returns, several times editor for Schaeferless Productions, inactive YouTube pooper, currently an award-winning filmmaker, defeater of Ragnar the Wretched, and the youngest Newt to ever achieve the rank of general in the Great Newtopian Army.
Wow, those last few things, I don't know what those are, but hey, that's good that you are those things.
That was an Amphibia. Like, the last two things were, like, an Amphibia reference.
Oh, okay, Amphibia. Wow, okay. Regular old Standrew over here. Welcome to the show, Romi. Yeah, I've been meaning to get you on the podcast for a while now, because I've been on your podcast twice. And just things have been happening, but hey, we did it. We're finally here to discuss movies on Too Many Movies. Yeah, we did it. So there's no time like the present. Let's get started with today's first movie. Romi, why don't you introduce this one? I think you're kind of more obsessed with this movie, considering it has John C. Reilly in it. Why don't you start things off?
Okay, so Wreck-It Ralph. It's
Yeah.
it's in my Letterboxd top 4 because like Penelope is literally me. Is there a right or wrong way to introduce it? I'm not as familiar with the podcast as. Okay.
No, you just say, hey, the movie, we're talking about it today. Hey, yeah, Wreck-It Ralph, we're talking about it. Very good.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what do you think of Wreck-It Ralph?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
It's like I remember seeing it like the month after it came out, I remember I was really interested in it like from the first trailer. Like, I was interested in seeing it like when it came out, and it was because all these the villains Anon scene. The Badanon?
Yeah, the Badanon scene.
Yeah, I just had Eggman and Bowser and Bison.
Yeah.
And
Zombie and Clyde.
God, I remember watching it with my little cousin, and I don't remember where, but she was like, she remember when like Kano, am I pronouncing his name right? When he did the heart thing with the zombies, she was like, he tore the zombie's heart out. It wasn't like she wasn't like scared or anything, but she just noticed it.
Right.
She's probably too young to recognize the reference.
Right, exactly. Well, I mean, I think that's an interesting point to bring up, like, too young to understand the reference. There's a lot of video game references in this movie because, well, it is technically a video game movie.
Yeah.
But a video game movie in the same sense as, like, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where, yes, it is a movie with a whole lot of references to other things, and it's, like, sort of a crossover movie, but, again, similar to Roger Rabbit, in a way, it still like has a centralized story with brand new characters that we've never seen before in other movies.
Yeah, and the references are well implemented,
Yeah.
unlike Shark Tale, which like just throws a bunch of references and like he's like he said you can't handle the truth. You laugh at the joke.
You had me at hello. Yeah.
And then like the Shrek, and then there's like the Shrek movies. The scene where the ring falls on Fiona's finger looks pretty cool out of context, but then you remember it's like a Lord of the Rings reference.
Yeah. I think this is more akin to Shrek in that way. Yeah, I've always, when it comes to like crossover movies a la Roger Rabbit, like I've always kind of seen Wreck-It Ralph as also being in that kind of level of Roger Rabbit, where like, you know, oh, it's this kind of movie but good. I still prefer Roger Rabbit personally because I just think that's a fucking fantastic movie. But on
They're both in my top. They're both in like. I both gave them both 5 stars.
I mean, honestly, the fact that Wreck-It Ralph is even like close enough to Roger Rabbit in that way, in my mind, is like amazing because like I would never have expected a movie in the 2010s to be like a real subtle crossover that could be compared to Roger Rabbit. Like that's just insane to me. But yeah, no, like I'm super glad you recommended this because I feel like this is a good movie I needed to rewatch to really kind of get a better sense of how I feel about it. I really loved it, like rewatching it again. I'm like, wow, because like I feel like the longer we get away from like 2010s Disney, the more critical I am of it, where you start to really kind of think about just how kind of messy that whole decade was for them. But I really feel like Wreck-It Ralph is one that still to this day is really good because, and for, again, like I've been saying, I'm amazed that it's that good because it has so many things working against it, but it still overcomes those things. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, yeah, and then you get to like the personal connection. As like a just I'm very similar to Vanellope, to the point where I actually look like her.
Mm-hmm.
We look very similar, except I have glasses, and I'm like shorter than most people in my family, and the scene where Ralph destroys Vanellope's car it struck a nerve with me that it really shouldn't have,
Mm-hmm.
because like I've had that sort of experience before.
You know what's great about that scene is that you'd think it's like, so it's supposed to be like a setup for like the third act where like the characters don't like each other, you know, until they eventually make up to like, you know, work together in the end. But like you know, it's kind of a mixture of things. It's like you'd think it's going to be like a liar reveal or like a misunderstanding or like all these third act tropes that we've seen a million times in other kids movies, but it's really not any of those things. Yes, it's a third act breakup, but it's done cleverly because Ralph just talked with King Candy. King Candy's like essentially saying like, hey, if you know, Vanellope wins, then you know, our game eventually gets shut down. And so in Ralph's mind, yeah, that makes sense. He's not really, I guess he is being lied to in that sense by the villain. I mean, duh, because he's the villain. But like in Ralph's mind, that still makes sense. And he doesn't like lie at all to Vanellope. He's not just like coming up with some lie. He's genuinely like, hey, King Candy told me that, you know, because you're a glitch, if you win the race, you put, you know, the entire game at risk. Like, I feel like in any other movie he would have like come up with a lie and like it would have just been forced in that kind of sense, but it's like it's delivered really naturally. And so then when he's like, you know, destroying the car, you know, it's not out of him like lying and so like it feels forced. Like it genuinely comes across as natural in that sense. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I really appreciate that this movie doesn't take the easy way out. It tries to force drama. Like it actually feels naturalized. And I think that's also a testament to how good these characters are. Like, you know, I love Ralph. I like Vanellope. I don't think I would in any other movie, but I think they work really well because, I mean, not only do they go back and forth with each other and it's entertaining to see, but like you actually feel that they care for each other because, you know, they've been through a lot in the movie. And so then when Ralph is actually destroying the car, I do feel kind of sad. I'm like, he doesn't want to do it, but he, in his mind, he has no other choice. So you're like, yeah, no, I totally buy that.
Yeah, I just love how like, and Sarah Silverman's acting in that scene,
Mm-hmm.
like she really like it really hammers it home. She just it feels like so terrified.
Yeah. I'm not annoyed by a Sarah Silverman performance. That's insane. But good. I'm glad. I'm so glad that she's actually delivering this really heart-wrenching performance in that instance. Like I'm totally buying her like actual just depressed and so miserable performance by it. Like she genuinely sounds heartbroken when like seeing Ralph destroy this Mario Kart made of candy. Like it's insane.
I mean, I don't. I mean, like to me, both of the Ralph movies have like I like Ralph Breaks the Internet more than I should because it gives me more Ralph and Penelope. I just love these two with all my heart.
Sure, I can get that. I mean, I don't like Ralph Breaks the Internet, but I get like the idea of like, you at least get more of those characters in that sense.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, because here's the thing, like Wreck-It Ralph, again, like I've been saying, like for all it does, like I probably shouldn't like it as much as I do. Because it is that crossover movie where it's like, oh, we have all these video game characters, but but none of them are like, major players. Like, yes, you see Bowser, yes, you see Eggman, you see Sonic like several times throughout the movie.
Not using it as a crutch.
Exactly, it's not a crutch. It's just it adds to the world building because you see Sonic sometimes, you see these characters sometimes. Like, I guess probably the most major character that was previously established that plays a part is Q*bert, but like, how many kids know who Q*bert is? Like, they're not using Q*bert as like a crutch in that sense. They're actually using Q*bert as a character in the movie,
To further the plot along.
Exactly.
There's that whole scene where like Q*bert hops up into Felix and he's like, my Q*bertese is a little rusty.
Yeah, it leads to a joke, but it's a funny joke, but it also does further the plot along. So it feels like the movie was well thought out. Like, that's a good thing. That's the best thing I can say about a movie, that it's well thought out.
Yeah.
Let me try and think of other things. I want to talk about King Candy. Can we talk about King Candy?
Yeah.
I was like, upon this most recent rewatch, I was like, holy crap, what a great twist villain. Like, this is the kind of villain you want to see in a lot of movies. So you have the moment where like he's introduced and you're like, he's kind of like so over the top that you're just like, I think he's going to be a bit of a villain, but he still has has a twist to him that still reveals him in the third act as like you didn't see it coming. You're just like, wow.
I just want to unfavorably compare it to some other twist villains of the decade. The worst being the one from Turbo.
Oh,
the
yeah.
race car driver, and he just, like, when he's revealed to be the twist villain, he just starts acting evil just because he can.
Yeah.
Like, in public. That's not how you do it.
Yeah. Oh, that's been like a huge thing with all these twist villains, is like at first they're perfectly normal, and then like once they're revealed to be the villains, they're all of a sudden evil. You got your Hans, you got your that was his mistake guy, you got the sheep from Zootopia. Like, these are characters that probably could be good twists, but they still act so different than what they were before that the twist doesn't come off as natural. It just comes off as like last minute. Like, the filmmakers are just like, oh, let's make him a villain, so then we have a villain in the third act. It's just like, no, that's not how you write a villain. Whereas King Candy, he's essentially acting the same way throughout the entire movie. So, like, there's no difference, but they still implement a twist into him that works, where, okay, he's not King Candy, he's actually Turbo, but it still works. Like, he's still a threatening villain, but he's also an entertaining villain, because I just love the voice that Alan Tudyk does for him. He sounds like the Mad Hatter from Alice in Wonderland, where he's just like, it's me, King Candy.
Yeah, like the Edwin.
Yeah, the Edwin, exactly. I'm pretty sure that was intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but like, I don't know, it's like, I don't know, like, you don't often think of King Candy as like one of those great Disney villains, but he kind of is when you really think about it. Like, yeah, he doesn't have like presence to him like, say, Ursula or Scar or Jafar do. Like, but I think because those are like such like high tier Disney villains that like we kind of forget about the other villains. And like, I think King Candy should go down as like one of like the best Disney villains, because not only is he really entertaining to watch and he's really well implemented into the movie,
Yeah.
like his twist really works. Like it's just a very well written villain character in a movie like this.
Yeah. I should mention, like, the movie was unfairly snubbed at the Oscars and the Golden Globes, but it won a boatload of Annie Awards, and one of them was for Alan Tudyk's performance as King Candy.
Oh, it's so deserved. He's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're right. This was kind of robbed, but at the same time, I mean, it's the Oscars. Like, how much do they actually know? So I'm not that pissed off by it, but at the same time, yeah, I guess it would have been nice if this won something major, but again, I'm not, losing sleep at night knowing that.
Yeah, the Kids' Choice Awards is kind of major. It won like Best Animated Movie.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Actually, it's funny that you bring up like how it got snubbed, because if I remember correctly, it was Brave that won the Best Animated Feature at the Oscars.
Yes, it was. Right? And then Nintendo put out a picture of Bowser saying, "Ah, Wreck-It Ralph was robbed."
I didn't know that, but that's funny.
And then they actually used it in the Shafrila's Best Animated Features ranked video, because Brave was like at the bottom slot, and he was like, "There's no way it deserved to win over Wreck-It Ralph. Everyone disliked that."
Yeah, no, I can buy that. But it's just funny that, because like I remember years ago seeing that like someone made the comparison of Wreck-It Ralph to Brave, saying how like it's weird that like Brave was the Pixar movie of that year and Wreck-It Ralph was the Disney movie of 2012, where it feels like it should be switched, because Brave seems like a pretty average like Disney princess movie, whereas like Wreck-It Ralph has that like Pixar cleverness to it. Like, I don't know, that just like really got my mind thinking at that time, like, oh yeah, I do think about that often.
Yeah, the whole what if video games had feelings that
right.
Pixar
yeah
itself on.
But like, I mean, that just goes to show that like, not every studio has a set in stone formula. Like, other studios can take those formulas and kind of form something new with that, because I feel like Pixar probably would have just made Wreck-It Ralph to be like a Pixar movie, whereas I feel like Wreck-It Ralph has aspects of that Pixar charm, but it's still undeniably its own movie,
Yeah, I was gonna say something and I forgot. So I just want to say, like, if I end up being friends with John C. Reilly IRL, it would just kind of radiate the image of, remember Ralph and Vanellope? This is them now. Feel old yet?
Yeah, exactly. Well, speaking of John C. Reilly, he really works as Ralph. Like, I think his voice acting is very good in this movie.
Yeah, he is he has that, like, he has such an expressive voice. He's just so like both frustrated and just soft and.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's not just like the part of the Will Ferrell duo in like some stupid Will Ferrell comedy. Like, he actually brings something to this character that I don't think many other actors could. Like, he has like this comedic voice, but you still feel bad for him essentially. Like, he has that emotion down really well. I think it works really, really well.
Yeah. and I remember reading that, like, I remember hearing that, like, they had, like, the voice actors often read scenes, like, together with, like, a little wall separating them, so, like, they could play off each other better. I think John talks about it in, like, his SAG-AFTRA Conversations video. Like, he's likening it to it was a trick that Sean Penn told him. So when, like, people are on the phone in a movie, and, like, you can tell when, like, most of the time you can tell when, like, there's nobody on the other end, and so the trick is that, like, having the other person on read the lines off screen, or like some other person read them, so like it better plays off them. And it's like looking in like I feel like I can explain it better than he does. I don't remember, like I think I can find it. Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's something I've always thought about is like how voice actors record their lines for like animated stuff because like whenever you see like behind the scenes of like voice actors in recording booths, it almost always is just these voice actors like standing in a room with a microphone and they're just like delivering these lines. And so you kind of wonder like, oh, when it's like really good films where like the characters have really good chemistry off one another, you really have to kind of imagine like, you know, when do like how well are like the sound mixers, or how good are the performances, like all of these things like start to really like enter into your mind when you think about that, because like, oh, these actors never really meet each other that often, but yet hearing their characters interact with one another just feels so natural, like that's just so amazing. But if you're saying that like several times while recording, like they actually did have you know, them interacting with one another, like that's awesome. Like that's cool that they would actually do that.
yeah, it's some yeah, it's really interesting. I love when people. I think Shark Tale did it too. They would have like some voice actors in the same room, so they could play off each other
And
and like
as we know, Shark Tale ended up very good.
it's like It's like it's such a fascinating train wreck.
Yeah, yeah,
Are,
that is true.
are you gonna get Yeah? Are you gonna get James for the Shark Tale episode if it ever happens?
Uh, I don't know, mayhaps, but like that's probably years down the line. But I mean, I can't imagine anybody else filling in that role, so that's the thing. uh, but yeah. Oh God, what else is there to say about Wreck-It Ralph? There's a lot. Like, there's just a lot that I love about this movie. I love Jane Lynch as Sergeant Calhoun. I think she's
Oh,
really funny.
yeah, she's
I love the scene where like Felix is just like, wow, she's super strict, and like the random soldier's just like, she was programmed with the saddest backstory ever, and you're just like, not only is it really funny the way they say that like she was programmed with the saddest backstory ever, like that's really funny, but also like it leads to some really good flashbacks where like Felix says like, oh,
yeah,
you're one dynamite gal, and then you have that scene where like she meets her husband and he's like, you're one dynamite gal, and then it goes through all these different scenes of him calling her dynamite gal, and it just repeats, and it's really funny, but like
yeah.
you still
It's also tragic.
it's tragic, but I think it's still delivered in such a comedic way that like it's both funny, but you still understand the tragedy of that, because well, like the tragedy part is the joke. Cause like, but that's the thing, is like the movie's not really about her, so the tragedy is treated as more like a joke. And also, like it said, it's a simulation. It's like she was programmed to be like that. But I don't think that takes away from, you know, her actually hurting, because, well, you know, the performance is so good. But again, like, you know, that's not what the movie's about, so it's more treated as a joke. But again, dynamite gal, like I quote that constantly all the time. It's just such a good
Yeah.
line.
Yeah, and like there's also like a fridge horror element to her being programmed with the backstory, because like there is a possibility that it's like a cutscene, which means she would have to like relive it over and over,
Yeah.
either as like either when if somebody starts a game, or or like as part of, like, you know how arcade machines have an attract mode?
Mm-hmm.
They don't, like she even like she could even like be reliving it when the game isn't even in action.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, that's the thing about this movie. I like the idea that they set it in an arcade. Like, I feel like you don't often see arcades a lot anymore. Are kind of a dying industry just because people would rather play video games at home now that it's like a home media market. But I think, you know, you still, I mean, that's why they have like the games that they do at that arcade. You have like the arcade games. You have like the generic Sugar Rush racing game. You have like the generic 80s game that Wreck-It Ralph is. Like I think they're very clever in what they include in this in this arcade, you know?
Oh yeah, I actually remember when the movie came out, they had 3 little retro style commercials for Heroes Duty and Fix It Felix Jr. and Sugar Rush Speedway,
Mhm.
and like, and then like the 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 Fix It Felix Jr. commercial has him. It says like that Ralph loves living up to his record name. Compare that to where he is 30 years later.
Mhm. Right. Yeah, no, it's very clever in that sort of sense. Yeah. God, I'm just trying to think of other things to talk about specifically in the movie. I don't know. Do you have anything else?
I don't know. It's kind of weird, but I just want to say, like, I've been trying to see, John C. Reilly performing at, like, the Largo, but sometimes he'll just show up unannounced. Like, there was a video, fairly recently of, him, him and Tenacious D and Beck and Dave Grohl singing Summer Breeze.
Okay.
I think it's on YouTube.
Yeah,
And
sure we can link it.
nowadays he does this thing called Mr. Romantic where he sings like Great American Songbook stuff. We're in like in a similar manner to like Mr. Cellophane.
Mhm.
And yeah, and yeah, I've been wanting to see that, but like I I I I'm hoping to go to Los Angeles soon, but it'll be a while.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, regarding Ralph, I just think this is a very good Disney movie. Like I think it is my favorite from the 2010s when it comes to like the 2010s Disney, you know? Like it hits everything that I want to see in a Disney movie. And it hits everything that I want to see in a crossover movie, again akin to something like Roger Rabbit, where it's
Yeah,
where it you have moments for diehard video game fans where like you have all these references, but like you still have a story and characters to attach to, like so then you're not just sitting there for an hour and a half being like reference after reference. Like it would get boring after a while, as we've seen with other crossover reference heavy movies. So
yeah.
this is one of the best examples of this working, and I'm so glad it exists.
Yeah, same.
Before we wrap up, I like to wrap up our discussions by talking about the movie on Blu-ray, because I do have it on Blu-ray. This movie, it's the
Same.
collector's edition Blu-ray. I also, well, I've noticed this is one of those Disney Blu-rays that if you pause it, it like starts playing other things. So like I also own Muppet Christmas Carol on Blu-ray, and it does the
Oh
same thing.
yeah,
Where like if you
yeah,
pause
the
it,
carolers.
yeah, it like just starts playing other things. Like it pauses the movie, but like it plays like some, I don't know, just some random videos it has, and it's just like what, this defeats the whole purpose of pausing. Like why are you doing this, movie? Like this is
Yeah,
just so strange.
I guess yeah, I can see why Disney Intermission didn't quite catch on. But
Mhm.
the Blu-ray of the Muppets, the 2011 movie, does like the same thing where like Muppets show up, and when some of my friends, my old friends from the show choir, were watching it one time, and like a Muppet would pop up whenever one of the younger members would walk past the TV, like it was like really freaky.
Yeah, it's such a strange thing to include. But regardless, I think the movie is still so good that I can get over it. Like I still think it looks great on Blu-ray quality. So this is definitely a keep for the collection.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you recommended this. I'm so glad I was able to watch it again. I probably could have watched Ralph Breaks the Internet before talking about this episode, but I didn't want to watch it again. 'Cause, but that's maybe an episode for the future. I don't know. But yeah, in terms of physical media, so you say you have this on Blu-ray too?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm imagining you're keeping it too?
Yeah, I was planning to see John C. Reilly in this play, and like it's one of my ambitions to like have it signed by him, because like this movie was just really special to me.
Mm-hmm.
It began when I wanted to see him in this play called Gather: Surprising Stories and Other Mischief at the Pasadena Playhouse, like not the actual playhouse, but like a smaller adjoining theater called the Carrie Hamilton Theater.
Mm-hmm.
And like I really, really wanted to go, but I couldn't. It was too last minute, and I couldn't get anyone to go with me. Like, it's just a bunch of reasons toppled upon each other. But
Yeah,
I will see him one day.
yeah, and get it signed. That would be cool to get like the Blu-ray signed by John C. Reilly. That would be cool.
Yeah.
All right. Anything last minute on Wreck-It Ralph 2012?
Yeah, I actually remember when like I used to work at Costco, and they at one point it would be showing like constantly on the big TVs,
Mm-hmm.
and that would help me get through like some lousy days. But then they stopped doing movies on the big TVs, so like, and that just kind of bummed me out.
Yeah. So, but they would show Wreck-It Ralph sometimes.
Yeah, there was a period when they actually showed it, um, like when I was there, and it looks so good on like giant TVs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's nearly, no, it is over 10 years old at this point because this came out in 2012.
Yeah, it's eligible for the National Film Registry.
Oh, is it real? Oh, it has to be 10 years or older? Okay.
Yes, at least 10 years old, and and that movie does have like cultural, historic, and aesthetic significance, which is also a requirement. It also has to be an American production or co-production,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yeah, it has historical and cultural relevance. It's one of the very few video game movies that's actually good. Yeah. No, I think it deserves it. It may be a while before it actually gets in, because sometimes movies take forever to get in, but you know what? I think that's one that definitely deserves it.
Yeah, it should get in sooner than later, because the
Sure.
registry typically inducts one animated film per year. Last year was The Little Mermaid, the year before it was Wall-E, and the year before that was Shrek.
Okay. Yeah, so I guess it'll be a while, but even if it takes a while to get into the Library of Congress, it has a place in my collection, and you know what? That's more important, I would say.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we could move on to our next movie if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll introduce this one because this is another movie I'm very excited you wanted to recommend. So we watched another movie that we got to talk about today, and that is brace yourselves, Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius. Another movie that was also nominated for an Oscar the year it came out.
Yeah, it was like the first year of the category, and like
I know, isn't that strange?
And when they introduced it, and when they first introduced that category, they would have like the characters from the movies in the audience. They would have these little pre-recorded segments,
Mm-hmm.
and they actually made little segments of them, like if each of them won,
Yeah.
and either of them lost, and so like I think the Jimmy Neutron one is resurfaced if Jimmy Neutron won.
That's funny. Yeah. Look, I love this movie. I'm just going to come right and say it. I love this movie. I'm very nostalgic for it because I watched it a ton as a kid. But to put it in the same category as like the very first best animated feature lineup, along with the likes of Shrek and Monsters, Inc., that's just weird to me that Jimmy Neutron of all movies was there. Was like it was with those movies. Like it just I don't know. That seems strange to me.
Yeah, there was a
I'm glad Shrek won because I feel like it deserved it. I mean, I would have also loved Monsters Inc. if that won it because Monsters Inc. is also very good, but I don't know. Jimmy Neutron never really stood a chance, unfortunately,
yeah.
among the likes of Monsters Inc. and fucking Shrek. But still, regardless of all of that, judging the movie on its own, I think it's a lot of fun. Like, it is very quotable. It's a very fun and, simple movie. It doesn't make a lot of sense logically, but I'm okay with that because I just think this movie's real neat. Let's talk about it. Romy, what did you think of Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius?
I think I can actually remember when the movie came out, and
Okay.
I don't have I don't have that much memory of it, but I remember it used to play on like there's a grocery store in my area. We used to have this kid section, and they would have like they would play some kid-friendly movies, and one of them was that one. I clearly remember the chicken dance scene being played on those TVs.
Oh, they're making her parents dance so lame. No, my dad actually dances like that. Such a good scene. Yeah, no, so I don't remember when this first came out, but I do remember watching it a ton as a kid because I owned it on like VHS. I sadly don't own that VHS anymore. I don't know. We must have gotten rid of it like years ago, but I remember like watching it a ton because I have a lot of lines in this movie memorized. Like, not only do
This is the seventh week in a row you've brought Ultraman to class.
Miss Fowl with nuclear knees. Not only do I have like certain lines like edged in my memory, but it's also like the way that the characters like deliver the lines. Like, I love the scene when Nick first shows up and he's just like, "Oh, am I? Sorry, I was too busy like copying my mom's handwriting to put on this note, this late pass." And then especially is the line where like Miss Fowle's just like, "We have show and tell," and he's just like, "Oh, I don't really do show and tell." Like the way he says, "I don't really do show and tell," how he's just so sarcastic and sleazy. And then Miss Fowle's just like, "Oh, that's right. Thank you, Nick." It's burned into my memory forever. Like, I don't remember fucking algebra I learned in high school, but I remember that clear as day. Like, I love the lines in this movie. They're so good. God, just and so
Yeah, speaking of the VHS,
yes.
Sorry if I intrude.
No, please go ahead.
I remember like there was a Tumblr post where somebody found a new unopened copy of the movie in a Kmart in like I think 2013 or 14.
I think I remember hearing about this. Yeah, so like which is really funny that like yeah, I mean cuz like the idea of that still being there in like current year cuz like cuz Kmart was still around in 2013. Like, I go to Bull Moose, which is like my local like DVD shop. Like, that's where they sell old media. So of course they have a section for VHS tapes, and I've bought VHS tapes from that store. But again, that's an old media store. That's not like Target or like Best Buy, where like, like the actual places that are still in business like that. You would never see VHS tapes in like a modern day Target. Like, trust me, I've checked. They do not exist there.
Yeah. Like, I never got to experience Kmart because like they closed before I could really be aware of them.
Mm-hmm.
I remember passing by a big Kmart in I think as late as 2011 when we were when we were going to Universal Orlando.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I was at a Kmart. I might have been when I was a sophomore in high school, and that would have been like 2013, maybe 2014. Like, I don't know. Like, Maybe that was a Kmart. I don't remember. It's long gone now. So I don't know if I don't even know if anything's replaced it. I think it's just an abandoned I think it's just abandoned store right next to the Staples and Market Basket that's near me. Like I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's. Speaking of which, I'm sorry to go into a tangent, but
I mean that's what this
they.
podcast is all about is tangents.
Sorry I didn't do a tangent. Like, didn't go too much of a tangent in um, when we were talking about Ralph, but there's an abandoned hardware store in my area. I think it was the one where they filmed like parts of the movie Closet Monster.
Mm.
And I'm thinking like if I get more clout in the industry, I'm gonna buy it and turn it into like an actual functioning film and TV studio because
Mm.
it's like just the perfect size for one.
Yeah, and you can sell VHS copies of Jimmy Neutron there.
Bring it all back around.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, so Jimmy Neutron. So I'm going to be honest, I'm not as familiar with the show as I am the movie. Like the movie I'm obsessed with because I watched it constantly as a kid and like I just get so many nostalgia tingles returning to it. Um but I know that like, there's a lot of differences between the movie and the show, not just from like character design, but like even just like the animation style is just oh so different, because like it seems a little more cinematic in this movie, because it was
Yeah,
released in theaters.
yeah, it feels a lot slower.
That too. It's definitely definitely has like a higher frame rate in the show. And even then, like I've watched some of the show, and I think some of it's funny, but I don't know. Something about this movie is just way funnier. Like I
Yeah,
think,
I watched the show more than the movie because it was on a lot, and I clearly remember like the episode where Jimmy's dad became cool, and like I remember somebody like not long ago somebody made an edit of where he's dancing to diarrhea sounds,
yeah.
and like it showed up on like a Vinny Vinesauce stream during like his YTP Plus thing. I want to see if I can find it.
I mean, I do have memories of watching the show. I have a distinct memory of watching the episode where they're like having a sleepover and like this like pizza monster is like haunting them, and then it's revealed at the end that it was all a dream, but like the pizza monster's dream, like this demon pizza just wakes up in like a pizzeria and he's just like, oh, I had this dream where like this big-headed kid was like chasing me, and I'm just like, and that really fucked with me as a kid. I'm just like, holy shit, like Jimmy Neutron is just the made up dreams of some demon pizza in some pizzeria. Like it just really fucked with me as a kid. Like it just really weirded me out.
Just like like imagine if you were introduced to the Tommy Westphal hypothesis. So like let me explain it. So there's a show called Saint Elsewhere.
Yes.
It was just your run of the mill medical drama.
I think I
But at
remember
the
what this is about, but no, please continue.
so at the end of the show, it's revealed that it was the whole show existed in the mind of this kid who was looking at a snow globe where where like the hospital was inside of it.
Yeah, I've heard
And
of this.
so there are and so people so people found out that like realized that since Homicide Life on the Street had some crossovers with it, then that show must exist in his head. And that show had crossovers with a bunch of other shows, and those shows were linked to other shows and even movies. So
And this ties back into it because Jimmy Neutron did a crossover with Fairly Odd Parents on several occasions. So,
oh yeah, and I guess like if Fairly Odder, the sequel show, the semi-sequel, had crossovers with other shows, then that would be possibly be part of the Tommy Westphal universe.
I guess so. Yeah. But anyway, to tie it back into the movie Jimmy Neutron, so I'm watching it. I'm just like, it's just such a weird movie when you get down to it because it's basically about a kid who's a genius. That's never really established why he's a genius. He's just a very smart kid, similar to like, I don't know, Dexter's Laboratory or something like that. And then he contacts aliens, and then the aliens come and abduct the parents. and then the kids have to go get the parents back from these egg-shaped aliens. I mean, when you get down to it, it's so simple, but like a lot of questions arise. Like, and I remember like as I got older, like I started to question a lot more things because it's just like, okay, all the parents got abducted. What about the adults that aren't parents? Like, did they also get abducted? But also, like, what constitutes an adult? Like, what happened to all the teenagers? Why is it just children that are left in Retroville? And for that matter, like, why these just specific kids? Like, how many parents actually got abducted? Like, they treat it as if like the town's been abandoned, but like then you see like all the parents that are like mind controlled that are like surrounding Poltra at the end. Like, that doesn't seem like a whole lot of adults when you get down to it. That does not seem like a town, like the amount of adults that would fill up a town. In which case you have to remember, oh right, this is a Nickelodeon movie meant for small children. I don't think they were really thinking about that. You know, they weren't really thinking about the nitty-gritty details.
Yeah, to quote a very famous show, it's just a show I should really just relax.
Yeah, exactly. Mystery Science Theater, yeah. But it's just really funny to nitpick that kind of stuff. And again, you know, like, speaking of nitpick, I guess we have to talk about the gigantic elephant in the room. If we're talking about nitpicks, the fact that they go into space and they don't have space helmets. Like, they're just like in open rocket ships flying through space, and they're just breathing normally. Like, you know what? That never really bothered me as a kid, because I'm just like, well, one, I didn't really think about that because as a kid, you're not really familiar with the sciences of space. You know, the sciences of space for me as a kid extended to Star Wars. But, you know, like, you know, thinking about that, it's just like, okay, like, I guess if we're really going off the logic that Jimmy Neutron, this genius, receives a note from these aliens and buys it as his parents for like an entire day before questioning it, it's like, all right, clearly this movie can get away with a lot of things, I guess, you know?
Yeah, I remember like some scenes. Like, I love how they made all the amusement park rides into stuff, like stuff to get to space. And like, it was one of my first like introductions to the concept of like a Chekhov's gun, like Weezer's like Carl Weezer's inhaler.
Yeah.
Like, it was just a one-off joke. Then he used it to like get at the alien.
Yeah, there's a couple of Chekhov's guns in this movie, because there's also the scene at the beginning when like Jimmy sees Goddard and he's just like, all right, play dead, and then Goddard explodes. And then he uses that at the end where like he's just like, Goddard, play dead, and Goddard explodes, and then they're able to escape the prison. Like, yeah, there's a couple of things like that where you're just like, huh,
Wow.
This movie had some thought put into it. But you know, it's little things like that that are kind of well written. It's just the logic of science fiction where it's like, oh, we're flying in spaceships out in space but with no space helmets. It's like, whatever. You know?
Yeah, and there's one of my Jess, one of our somebody we both know, she said she watched it at summer camp. The summer camp she works at, and the kids kept asking, how could they breathe in space? And the director told them, because it's just a movie.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a movie. It's a movie made by Nickelodeon. Like, who cares? Like, just witness the story it's telling. And I mean, you know, for what it is, like, yes, there's a lot of inconsistencies in the logic. Whatever. It's a cartoon. Like, I'm here because it's a very funny movie. Like, and yeah, there's so many jokes that are just really funny in this movie that, like, again, like I've been saying, I quote this movie constantly just because it's so memorable in that case. Like, Carl and his obsession with llamas, like Sheen and his obsession with Ultralord. Like, it leads to very funny scenes. I just, oh god, thinking about like the scene where like Sheen and Nick are fighting in the prison, how like Nick's just like, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard, and Sheen's just like, no, this is the stupidest thing you've ever heard, and he just like starts gargling off nonsense. Like, it's very simple jokes and scenes, but like they're funny nonetheless, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
Oh, one thing I wanted to mention. I just realized this time around when they're on like the little asteroid flying through space, and like Nick is like telling that like campfire story. He's essentially reciting the plot of Blair Witch Project because he says like
well,
the three filmmakers get out of their tent and like it's just like I never noticed that as a kid because well I didn't watch Blair Witch Project as a kid, whereas like now as an adult, now that I've seen Blair Witch Project, I understand the reference now.
oh yeah, Blair Witch Project is another movie that should be in the National Film Registry because of because it did so much for the found footage genre.
Mm-hmm. And the Blair Witch sequels should be forgotten and never mentioned.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. But yeah, no, I think what it boils down to with this movie is I'm very nostalgic for it, clearly. Like, I'm not going to act like it's a fantastic movie. Like, again, the fact that it went up into the Oscars against the likes of Monsters, Inc. and Shrek is pretty much akin to when Shark Tale went up against Shrek 2 and The Incredibles. Like,
Yeah.
it's and
don't
and not to say that like Jimmy Neutron is on the same level as Shark Tale. Like Shark Tale is its own cinematic masterpiece. But I feel like Jimmy Neutron, like objectively speaking, is a better movie than Shark Tale. But again, Shrek and Monsters Inc. like those are two titans when it comes to animation. Like they're genuinely great films. Whereas I feel like Jimmy Neutron is just fine at best. Clearly I rate it higher because I'm so nostalgic for it and I think it's just so funny. But that's the thing. Like, I would never really claim it as like, Monsters Inc. tier or Shrek tier. But then again, Shrek and Monsters Inc. don't have the cotton candy kid. The one time I will ever agree with Doug Walker's stance on comedy comes from misery, where seeing that little black kid, like, super fat from eating all that cotton candy and bawling his eyes out because he won the cotton candy eating competition, and then he burps and his shirt rips. It's mwah, like chef's kiss. It is so funny. It leaves me in a fit of tears every time. We were trying to see who could eat the most cotton candy, and I won.
and I was just thinking I didn't see it I was just trying to look up the Annie Awards. Like it didn't look like there was much in much animated movies in 2001.
It's a shame that like Atlantis came out in 2001 and it wasn't nominated at all. Like
oh
at
my god. How can I forget that?
I know. Well, I mean, technically speaking, Spirited Away also came out in 2001, but then it was re-released in America in 2002, so that's why Spirited Away won in 2002 instead, but even though it's technically came out in 2001. But yeah, like Atlantis came out in 2001, like but I get it. Like Atlantis was a huge bomb at the time, and like critics were kind of sour on it. I guess that is a case of, well, nowadays we see it as good because, well, yeah, I like Atlantis.
Yeah, it's like one of those movies that people just kind of look and turn their noses upon it, and then they realize that it was like oddly progressive and like in terms of certain themes.
Yeah.
When it was like.
Now looking back, but I guess looking at it though, I think I still rated Jimmy Neutron higher than Atlantis, so I still prefer Jimmy Neutron over Atlantis. But
yeah,
I think when we think of, I think looking back, if Atlantis was a much bigger hit, it probably would have been the third movie instead of Jimmy Neutron.
Yeah.
Thinking about it, that means they would have had to have animated like Milo and Kita. Like if it won, like they would have had to animate them like in the audience, like they did with Jimmy Neutron and Shrek.
and Sully and Mike.
Oh yeah, wouldn't that have been cursed? would those have been the characters they would have used? They probably would have, because like those are like the two most popular characters. Those are the two characters you think of when you think of Atlantis. So it probably would have had to have been them. Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say about Jimmy Neutron before we get into talking about the DVD I have it on?
I don't really know. I don't own it, but I did have the soundtrack from a thrift store at some point in time. But then
Ooh,
I just
yeah. That's a good point, actually. The music is really nostalgic for me.
yeah,
I'll say
it was
that.
it was where I first heard the Blitzkrieg Bop by the
Yeah. I
Ramones.
know people probably think Spider-Man Homecoming when they think Blitzkrieg Bop, but like I have always thought of Jimmy Neutron when thinking of that song because I
Yeah,
associate it with this movie. Um, yeah,
and
and then you
and
have
when
like
they
We're the Kids in America, other. Actually, We Got the Beat. That song I also associate with this movie.
I didn't recognize it back then, but like eventually, I first eventually I just like I don't associate it that much, but I probably think like Disney Channel, I guess.
Hmm.
I don't remember where else I've heard it,
You know what I
but I
noticed, like, is that they have like a weird remake of the "She Blinded Me with Science" song at some point in
oh
the movie,
yeah,
and that always kind of weirded me out because like I like the original song from the '80s, and then to just hear this like remix like in this movie, and like you barely notice it because it's when he's walking through his lab, and like a lot of that song has like these like laboratory and like kind of mechanical sounds to it, so it just kind of fits in with the scene a little too well where you don't even really notice it. um, but it's still a neat inclusion. Like, when you think of, Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius, and you want to implement like pop culture songs, like I think She Blinded Me with Science is one you want to put in.
yeah. Muppets Tonight has the funnier implementation of that song.
Yeah. Is that
It
the.
was like, hey, could you tell us how you met this person, preferably with a song by Thomas Dolby?
I gotta watch more Muppets Tonight.
Yeah,
The
LFI is like the most goated joke in the
Yeah,
show.
yeah. The extent of my knowledge of Muppets Tonight is all the characters were in Muppets from Space. So,
Yeah, I know I don't know if it's gonna be able to show up on Disney Plus, but I
oh
think all the
yeah.
episodes are on YouTube.
Oh really? Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know. But yeah, okay. So you say you don't own this on any Blu-ray or DVD. I do. I own it on DVD. I have it on I think it's a DVD from 2002 because it's saying that it's like Paramount's 90th anniversary. How old is Paramount? When was Paramount like founded
Uh,
officially?
1912?
Was it 1912? It might have
Yes,
been.
and because like they had their 100th anniversary in like 2012.
Okay, so yeah, so this movie would have the movie came out in 2001, but I guess the DVD release would have come out in 2002, so that would have been Paramount's 90th anniversary. Okay. Um
Yeah.
it's really cool DVD. The case is like yellow. You know how like standard DVD cases are usually black. Sometimes they'll be a different color. I own Marmaduke 2010 on a red DVD case.
Yeah.
That's a whole other lore bit of the podcast. But anyway, like, yeah, this is a DVD that's in pretty good condition, and it's in a yellow case. I I think I got this from a friend. Like, I think I was at a friend's house when I was like 18, and I remember like he had like a bunch of DVDs that he was getting rid of. And one of them was Jimmy Neutron. And I'm like, dude, can I take this? He's like, yeah, I don't want it. And I'm like, yes. And so I snatched it. And I'm like, yes, I have Jimmy Neutron on DVD. And yeah, you get like this very cool looking menu with it. Yes, it's a DVD, so it's not the highest quality, but like, I think there's something charming about owning movies from like the early 2000s on like these nice early 2000s DVD. So I love the movie. I'm clearly very nostalgic for it. I
Yeah.
can quote the hell out of it like nobody's business. So I'm keeping the DVD, not just because I love the movie, but because I like the idea of owning this DVD. I think it's a very neat DVD. And yeah, no, it has a place in the collection for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, will you ever own it on physical, do you think?
Maybe it'll probably show up in Value Village, but I don't have that much DVD space, so
Mm-hmm.
maybe when I get my own house, like 2 or 3 years from now.
Yeah. So, yeah, but like I guess something like Wreck-It Ralph is like of more importance than I would say this movie, I would suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get that, but what's most important is yes, Jimmy Neutron holds a place in this collection for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, was there anything else you wanted to say before we wrap up the episode?
So I own, gosh, trying to find the right words. So as Hal inferred earlier at the start of this episode, I have a podcast called Watch This. It's like MSTs of movies, which are like a mix between a traditional podcast and an MST.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
I was on the
and
Muppet Christmas Carol episode and the Lake Michigan Monster episode.
yeah,
Right? Did I get those right? I think I remember
yes,
those are the movies we
you
talked
did.
about. Okay.
And like it can be found on several podcast places. And I'm hoping to get another podcast put together called I I don't know what it's called, but it's gonna be like a bunch of like I'm gonna interview a bunch of entertainment people I've met on my journeys, but like and with a little help from some friends. So like I keep blanking on a title, so like um maybe you could help out with the actual podcast. Uh,
Well, I'm sure one like a podcast title will come to fruition at some point, but I mean, if you're still in the planning process, it'll come eventually, I'm sure.
yeah.
Yeah, is there
I mean, I'm gonna try not to get too many actors. I mean, maybe like, I mean, a lot of the people I've met are like directors and other people.
Mhm.
I'm also hoping to bring on some musicians, um, and maybe some authors and theater people.
Nice. Well, is there anything else you want to shout out? You have don't you have a letterbox? I think I follow you on letterbox.
Yes, I have a letterbox. It's at Fragglevision.
Mhm. Yeah, I'll be sure to link all of these things in the description below for sure. Yeah. All right, Romy, thanks for coming on. I'm sorry we've been planning this for months now, but I'm glad we were finally able to talk about Wreck-It Ralph and Jimmy Neutron. I'm glad
Wow,
I'm glad I can keep these
thanks.
movies. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. And thank you, the listener, for listening to this podcast. If you want to support the show, give a like, give a comment, listen to us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or on YouTube as well. That's fine too. Whatever. Doesn't matter. We're recording this on the day that I released the Ninja Turtles episode. So hopefully I'll get this out maybe Wednesday. What is Wednesday? Monday's the 7th because that's my birthday. Tuesday would then be the 8th. Wednesday would be the 9th. So hopefully it comes out on that day. If not, it'll come out eventually. Eventually. But yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, thanks for listening. And always remember, it's Jimmy Neutron time. No, I'm bad and that's good. I will never be good, and that's not bad.
I'm cringe and that's based. I'll never be based and that's not cringe.
Oh, we saved it. All right, goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Just